Hi guys, my name is Desi Kadra and welcome to my podcast, Bridging the Realm. I'm super excited to have our guest today. His knowledge on the topic of numerology, tarot, and everything to do with spirituality has just amazed me. And I'm really, really glad to have him with us today. So his name is Richard Abbot. He's a numerologist and a spiritual teacher. He has studied numerology since 1989 after meeting his first teacher, Arthur Norris, who introduced him to the mystical traditions. Richard has written extensively on the topics of numerology, tarot, meditation, and spiritual practices, and has published 7 books on the subjects. His aim is to help people activate their best self and provide guidance for those who seek a better way of life. So, Richard, welcome to Bridging the Realm. Thank you so much for being here.
Nice to see you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so how are you today? How's everything with you?
Good. It's a little warm for my liking, but I'll live with it. I'll suffer the punishment.
I know, yeah. Us British people are not really used to
No,
hot
we're
weather,
not.
so we have to suffer now. But yeah, so first of all, before going into the numerology, let's start with how you got into this and what made you go into this in the first place, because I find your story so fascinating. So I really think the audience would also like to hear that.
Okay, so it goes back to being at school. It goes back to being at school in the late 1980s and being very interested in all mystical alternative kind of things. So a couple of things happened. I in a town that was very near to where I lived, there was an occult shop, and I found out about it because it was on the front page of the local evening paper, because it had been firebombed, it had been attacked, vandalized, supposedly, they said, by fundamentalist Christians. I'm not sure they ever got to the bottom of that, but that's what it supposedly was. So of course that was splashed all over the front page of the paper. I thought, I'll have some of that. I'll go and visit there and see what this is all about. So I went along to this place. So we're talking like 1988 now. I went along to this place, and it was actually like going into, if in your Harry Potter, into Diagon Alley, where Harry Potter goes to buy his wand and all that kind of stuff. It was like that before Harry Potter even existed. And it was just unbelievable. It was like going into a different dimension. And I walked in the shop and I thought, this is my world. And I maxed out my credit card, and I maxed out my savings, buying loads of stuff, and proceeded to start learning about it and using it. The first practical thing that I did was I decided to do the astrology chart of people that I knew, and particularly my favourite teacher at school. So I took my teacher's details and I said, I'll do you your astrology chart if you like. And he was like, oh yeah, whatever. And I did it, and I worked it out. I did it from scratch, no computers. And I gave it to him. And then nothing else was said. And then a couple of weeks later, he was taking the lesson. We were doing he was an economics teacher. So we were meant to be doing like whatever, inflation or prices or whatever. And he said, we're not going to do the curriculum today. Today I want to talk about astrology, he said. And he basically he opened up the class to talk about astrology, because he was so amazed that this report that I'd done for him was so accurate. He'd never encountered anything like it in his life. He was a cold, hard, rational, logical person. It was all nonsense. But suddenly he was blown away. And I was completely embarrassed and mortified. I didn't know what to do about this at all. But I didn't need to worry too much, because that was the last lesson that he ever gave at that school. Because one of the kids had gone home. Their parents had said, what did you do today in economics? And they said, we talked about astrology. The parents rang up the school and got him fired.
No
Way. I bumped into him there. So I didn't see him again. And that was like, oh, astrology, I'm not doing any of that anymore. But I bumped into him a few years later. And I said, look, I'm really sorry what happened. He said, no, 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 don't be. It's the best thing that ever happened. The astrology showed me that actually I wasn't really meant to be a teacher.
Wow.
He'd left, he'd got a complete career change. Obviously, it had been traumatic at the time, but it set his life on a new track. And that was when it obviously dawned on me that, oh, okay, right, we're onto something here.
So he was completely fine. I guess from what I've seen, a lot of people actually, that's how it happens. They kind of don't believe in it, and then until someone shows them, oh, actually, and they're like, oh, okay, this is so true. And then they just start off on this completely different path.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, you've got to remember that this was a long time ago. This was 88, 89. I mean, that's a different world, man. That was a different world back then. I was freaky for even being into it in the first place. And for the teacher of the class to start talking about it got even more freaky.
Wow. Yeah. And I can imagine it was really frowned upon because, back in those days, I can imagine it was very much like, no, this is a cult, this is the devil, or anything to do with that.
I mean, it was an interesting time because, I mean, I was slightly too young to really get it. But that 88, 89, 90, 1990 kind of time, it was raves, dance music, and there was a bit of a change going on. So actually, although that happened at school, very quickly afterwards, it became quite normal. So I was then, I remember we used to go to raves and what have you in about 1990. And I was the resident weirdo that did tarot cards and numerology. But actually it wasn't weird because people were like, oh, this is totally cool.
Yeah.
So I would go to clubs wanting to, do the things that you do at raves, and actually I would land up giving readings for people.
Yeah. So you were that guy.
I was that guy. Yeah, I was that guy.
There always has to be one at least, isn't it, that does something like this that makes you think, oh, okay, this is weird, but I like it, kind of thing.
Yeah, but it was totally accepted. So there was a quick shift by about 1990 or so. It was in the people I was mixing with. It was just like normal.
Okay, so tell me about the psychic affair that you went to.
Yeah, so shortly after the astrology thing at school, I went to. So I was on my quest then to find out what was going on. So I went to a psychic fair on a Saturday, and I walked around the place. It was a very small one in Northampton, so rural, provincial England, and I really wanted to have a tarot reading with this woman from Liverpool. And the fact that I wanted to have a tarot reading with this woman from Liverpool was probably nothing to do with the tarot, if I was honest. It was probably to do with her. Okay. But anyway, so I put my name down on her little list. You know how the drill works. Yeah. And I went back at the allotted time, and she wasn't available. So I wrote my name down later on the day, and she wasn't available for that either. Yeah. And I tried this about 3 or 4 times, and each time I was meant to be having the reading with her, she wasn't available. Okay, all right, whatever. End of the day, go home. So then it was a 2-day event, so I went back on the Sunday. Now on the Sunday, so where I lived in a small village with my parents, and it was about 10 or 12 miles away from the place where the psychic fair was. And back in those days, this sounds like it's coming out of the Victorian times, but back in those days, bus services were quite limited. So there was no bus from where I lived to where I wanted to go on the Sunday. There was on the Saturday, that's how I'd got there, but there wasn't on the Sunday. Yeah. Right? My parents were never going to take me. So how was I going to get there? So I walked. And it will never leave me what happened. So I started walking, 10 or 12 miles. So it was a long time it took me to get there. And it rained all the way.
Oh, God.
All the way. And like that rain, where sometimes it doesn't come down, it comes at you in your face.
Oh
It
God.
was so hardcore. And I remember thinking, what am I doing? Why am I even here? Why don't I just go home? This is insane. And I remember thinking that. And then at that moment, because it was windy and raining, at that moment, I just felt a disgust of wind at my back, which almost like lifted me up. It didn't obviously lift me up, but it felt like it lifted me up and just like pushed me forward.
Yeah.
So that I thought, let's just go home and be done with it and leave this. But actually, I wasn't. I was going to the place.
Yeah.
So I got to the place, in the end, soaked to the skin. Went to try again to have a reading with this tarot reader from Liverpool.
Yeah.
She'd gone home on the Saturday. She wasn't there.
God, just wasn't meant to be, was it?
It wasn't meant to be. So, but I obviously was meant to be there. So I looked around the room and I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And a few random things happened. But basically, I clocked in the corner this old guy, and I just thought, you know stuff, mate. I could see that you know things.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he knew, but it was obvious that he, did. He was old and wise, kind of looking.
Like,
yeah, he did. But he'd been there on the Saturday, and I hadn't noticed. So anyway, so I sat down, and we had a reading. So we did a little bit of palmistry, a little bit of astrology, and a little bit of numerology.
Yeah.
And he said lots of things, but none of the things really I could connect with. I could understand it, but it wasn't ringing true.
Wasn't resonating, yeah.
It wasn't resonating at all, really. But he recorded it. He put it all on tape, and I paid him 10 quid, and he gave me the tape, and I went home, and that was it. And he was very nice, and end of story.
Yeah.
So that was in the November. Then fast forward to like the May of the following year, and really in that 6 months, so I took that tape and I'd forgotten about it. I'd put it in the drawer in my room, and I'd forgotten about it. But in the 6 months, my life had just gone like completely chaotic. Everything had kind of happened.
Wow.
I'd moved out of my parents' house. I'd moved in with a girlfriend. It was totally chaotic. I'd left school for lots of reasons before I should have done, and I got into some bother, and it was bad. My life was bad news. It was going downhill rapidly.
Yeah, in those 6 months.
In those 6 months. And I was going through some stuff, and I found the tape that this old man, whose name was Arthur, had given me. And I went, oh yeah, I remember that. And I put the tape on, and everything that had happened in the last 6 months, he had described it.
Oh, wow.
He had said it.
So he literally...
Looking back.
So he predicted pretty much everything that had happened in those 6 months.
Every single thing. And of course, that's why I had poo-pooed it at the time. Because I was like, that's never going to happen. How could that possibly be? Oh, that just doesn't even make sense. But it had all happened. And it had all happened exactly as he had said.
Wow. That's...
and I hadn't attracted it because I'd completely forgotten about it. I'd poo-pooed it and stuck the tape in the drawer. So listening to it was like, oh Jesus, why didn't I listen to this 6 months ago? I could have avoided a lot of grief.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why didn't I believe in it?
Why didn't I believe? So I thought, right, I've got to do something about this. So I wrote to him, as you did back in the day, no email, no texting. I wrote to him and said, can I come and learn, please? And that's when I started being, he became my teacher. And I became his pupil, and that was 1990, and it continued until he died in 2010.
So that was just that one instance. It took you that one instance to go from, oh, I don't believe in this, to, oh my God, I want to learn about this.
It was so, everything that he'd said, and he'd been really good as well, because he'd not only given the reading, but he'd actually explained what he was doing and explained where he'd got it from. So for example, I remember the Tower card was very strong in the reading. So rather than just saying a load of stuff that he saw, he said, he described and explained a little bit about what the Tower was, which enabled me to not only like get the guidance, but also learn a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So I could understand what had happened.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I believed it before, but it was at that point where I was like, okay, right, I better be getting real with this.
Or else I'm going to have another episode where I don't listen and my life just goes to hell.
Well, and actually then in the 20 years that followed, I did have a few episodes where I didn't listen and my life did go into various kind of crises, but it's all part of the learning, is it not?
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, we all have to learn our own way. And I guess it's not until I've noticed with people, you just have to be ready to receive that information, to really just take it in. No matter how many people try to tell you something, and it's like, okay, yeah, but it's just not going in. It's not really absorbing into your consciousness.
So here's, so Arthur's comment on that was that we can only learn what we're ready for.
Yeah.
And if we're not ready, we can't learn it. And it doesn't matter how much we try and stuff it in our heads. If we're not ready for it, it just won't go in.
Yeah. And I think back to some of my readings when I had 5 years ago, when I first kind of went into spirituality and stuff. And in the beginning, it didn't really make much sense to me. It was kind of like, oh, okay, so your family, this is what happened and this is why it happened. And I was like, yeah, okay, it kind of makes sense, but not too much. But then only years later, after I've listened to them, oh, okay, that's what she meant by that. There's this kind of eureka moment where you just think, oh, okay, I see now. Yeah. So that's a pretty cool, that's quite interesting. But yeah, you do kind of beat yourself up and think, oh, only if I listened. But yeah, I guess that's just not how it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, if only I had. But then again, on the other hand, if I had listened rather, so if I'd have listened to his initial predictions, way back in 1989, I probably would not have gone back to him.
Yeah.
I probably would have avoided the trouble and gone down a different path and not gone back to him, actually. So it kind of worked out all right in the end.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that catalyst had to happen for you to really just kind of look at it properly and be like, oh, okay, that's something I want to go into now.
Yeah. And understanding something, or even so hearing something is one thing, understanding what you're hearing is another, but living it is completely another thing entirely.
Yeah.
So yeah, readings, generally speaking, and you have to live your life.
Yeah, totally. And I've seen that with a lot of people, especially in the spiritual, people who get into spirituality. And I see that, you've got people who go to all these retreats and do all this work on themselves, but then it's almost like something's not quite clicking. There's not that sort of realization of, oh, actually, I have the power to do all these things for myself. That's one of the main things I've realized. People kind of that go into this, they kind of just expect for the teacher to heal them or fix them. There's this, sort of belief that, oh, if I go to this person, they'll fix me and they'll make me better. But I feel like, yeah, it takes a lot of self-work to kind of have this realization that actually it all comes from you. But obviously they guide you, isn't it? They guide you, but you have to do the work for yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And it's not just that's the best way to do it. I think it's the only way to do it, because if somebody does the work for you, the work actually doesn't get done. So the person has to do it themselves. I mean, I've met lots of people over the years, and I remember one thing which one wise old lady said to me once, which is that on this path of learning about all this stuff, really what happens all the time is that people journey away from themselves, for maybe a long time and in lots of ways, in order to journey back to themselves again. So we find out what we really are, by trying loads of avenues of what we're not.
Yeah, totally.
In other words, we have to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We have to make mistakes, and it's a bitch, but it's true.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the best way to do it. And it's almost like you have to know what you don't want, like what you just said. You have to know what isn't you in order to go towards what is you. It's almost like trying to narrow it down by trying out all the things that you don't like, and then you're kind of getting to less and less and less things, and then you think, oh, okay, this feels like me. Yeah.
Yeah, so numerology is one of the things that Arthur taught me, and it's very so numerology is just understanding the mystical and energetic value of numbers. And one of the principles of numerology is that you begin in life by doing lots of addition. In other words, you add this to your life, add that experience to your life, do this, see that person, go here, go here. You're just adding experiences.
Yeah.
But actually then you get to a certain point where what you want to be doing is subtracting things. And you say, actually, no, I don't need that person in my life anymore. Actually, I want to not be like that anymore. I want to take that away from my life. So the whole of life is a kind of addition and subtraction thing.
Yeah. Do you think that happens more with sort of things like retrogrades and, astrological kind of things, or?
Yeah, maybe it does. But I think more broadly, it happens when there are crises. So Arthur used to say that crises are when there are lessons that we don't want to learn. So when there's a lesson coming at us and we don't want to learn it, we've decided consciously or subconsciously, no, I'm not having any of that, then a crisis will kick off.
Yeah.
And it could be a personal crisis, or it could be a social, national, global, whatever. It's always something that we don't want to know. So, but whenever in times of let's say it's global crisis, right? Let's say we're in that kind of time.
Yeah.
Actually, that is bound to accelerate a lot of people's learning, and it's bound to accelerate a lot of people in their process of subtraction, because they're going to say, that doesn't work. That system is BS. That person's an idiot. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't want to know about that. So they'll end up subtracting all this nonsense from their life that they thought it used to be good, and actually they've realized it's not.
Yeah.
So suddenly the world crisis actually becomes really positive out the other end.
It's almost like the universe's way of pushing you into a corner and saying, right, you either make the choice now or you don't. You either get rid of this or I'll force you, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. But like in my situation with that reading, if I had listened to the reading, I would have avoided 6 months of quite heavy grief, but I didn't. So we always have a choice whether we kind of, whether we are prepared to be guided or not. But even if we're not, we will be in the end, because we will realize that we have to be. Yeah.
It's almost like those lessons that you were meant to learn. You're going to learn them one way or another. It's just, it depends. It's up to you whether you choose the hard way or the easy way.
Absolutely. So he used to say, whenever anything went wrong in my life, and I was complaining about it, or if ever I was commenting about the world in general and saying, oh my God, what's going on here? What's all this about? He would say, always the same thing. He would say, well, it's all to learn from.
That's a good way to think about
it. Which is true.
Yeah.
It's all to learn from. Whatever it is, it's all to learn from. And there's never a point where that learning is done.
Yeah, you're constantly kind of evolving, aren't you? There's always something you need to expand on. So in terms of numbers, let's speak a little bit more about that. I really like the way you described it here. You said numbers reveal the essence, structure, form, and shape of all life through defining its vibration. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so everything is number. Everything is number. The chair that you're sitting on probably has 4 legs. If it's got a central spindle thing on wheels, then all right, it's only got one of those things, but maybe it's got 5 wheels, right? So anything, you've got 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, whatever it is that you can think about yourself or about the world, you can, its root is in numbers. And there isn't anything that is, manifest. Let me say it the other way around. Everything that you can touch is to do with numbers. It's rooted in numbers. So maybe ideas or concepts or things like love can't be put into numbers. But as soon as it comes into a manifest material form, it's all to do with numbers.
Yeah.
So what are those numbers? Well, numbers are energy, and the energy is a vibration energy. So a table is solid, yeah? Because if you bang your fist on it, hard enough, or bang your head on it, it will hurt, and you won't better go through it. It will stop you. Yeah. But actually, it's not solid because its molecules are vibrating all the time. So nothing is actually solid. Everything is moving all the time. It's just that the difference in the vibration between the table and your hand that you try to push through it, well, there isn't a difference. They're the same, so it can't get through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like water. You can dive into a swimming pool from 1 meter up without any difficult effects. Try and dive into that swimming pool from 400 meters up, and the swimming pool will be like a brick wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything is vibration and everything is moving. It's just a question of what its vibration is.
Yeah, and that's scientifically proven as well, isn't it? Science says that everything is energy at the very end.
Yeah, and that's not even new science. That's old science. So everything is energy and everything is moving and nothing is still. And numbers tell us, the science of numerology, art of numerology, tells us what those vibrations are. Yeah. So if you can work out the numbers of a person or the numbers of a thing, you really can work out what their vibration is, what their energy is, and therefore what energies they attract to them.
Okay, so each number has a specific vibration and energy. And if you take it back even further, they say that we choose the life that we're born into. We choose as souls, we choose our name and our date of birth. So if you think about it from that point of view, then we've chosen the numbers. We've chosen this vibration for a specific reason, basically.
Absolutely. There's no randomness here at all. There is, we chose the parents, we chose our circumstances, and we chose the vibration to come in at. What we do after that maybe is up to us. Although there's a universal force guiding us as well.
Yeah.
But the vibrations are not random and not accidental.
So it's kind of like so say as a soul, you kind of want a specific experience out of life, and you're going to opt for a specific date of birth that will give you that resonance or that vibration that will allow you to experience these similar energies to draw into your life, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. That's a good way of saying it. The soul selects the best place and time and circumstances with which to do what it needs to do. And it always needs to do something specific, something particular. I mean, a deeper way of saying it, but it gets a bit we're all of our time. So I was born in 1972. Therefore, I'm of a certain generation. And that means that I have a certain resonance with certain things because they are familiar to me, and I don't have a resonance with other things. So I wasn't alive on the planet in the 1960s. So I can read about the 1960s and the Beatles and Carnaby Street and all that kind of stuff. I can read about it or watch films about it, but I will never really get it because I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So we're all a product of our time, and the numerology kind of is suggesting that we've got to fulfill, our life is all about fulfilling the promise of the day that we were born.
Yeah.
It's a bit deep, that, but for people that are interested.
Yeah. No, I've also heard the things that have happened on the day that you're born also play into the type of person that you are or you want to be.
Absolutely. And also you can take that a little bit further, and you can say, because of course you were born, but you were conceived 9 or so months before that. So if you can, I mean, this is not everybody has this information, but if you could ever find out your conception date, that is significant, because the date you were conceived and then the time that you spent in the womb, and then the date you were born, that 9 months there, what happened in that 9 months might be very significant to your life. And I managed to find that information out. And for me, I won't go into details, but for me, that's absolutely on it.
Really?
It's almost like some things happened in life and the world, and then I was conceived.
So you were.
It would be like that for everybody.
Yeah. So you were kind of like a product of that vibration of what was happening at the time when you were conceived. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's loads of kids being conceived, never mind born. There's loads of kids being conceived now and the past few years that will, because of and to do with the world situation. I mean, that's a bit deep, but it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, no, I've heard of that as well. And also I've heard that while you're in the womb, you're also kind of downloading the consciousness of your parents, of your...
Yeah.
So all of that is kind of playing into you and who you are. Wow, that's really fascinating.
And the conscious, all the things that are happening around in the life of your parents as well. So whatever your parents will be watching or reading or listening to or doing, it's bound to have an effect. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that you can find just for using numerology, such as your weaknesses. I really like this idea that you can find, your positives and your weaknesses and kind of try to work with them in harmony, because obviously not all of us really know what our weaknesses are. So if we do know them, it will be, I guess, a lot easier to manage them.
Sure. So the idea is that, so I think of a lot of things in terms of nature. So the thinking about weaknesses is really like going into the garden and pulling up weeds. Yeah. So my attitude is if you pull up the weeds in the garden, you don't have to do anything with the flowers. The flowers will sort themselves out. All you got to do is give the flowers some space and get the weeds out, and the flowers will do their wonderfulness. Yeah. So your positive, your best self knows what to do, and will do it to the max if the weeds that you have can be got rid of. Yeah. So it's not about looking at weaknesses and then kind of like going into some kind of deep trauma about it. It's like, no, look, this is a thing which gets in the way of my growth, and now I understand it, and I'm going to stop doing it. Yeah. Easier said than done, of course, but that's what it's about. What
would be the best way, I guess? So, because there's so many different things, and you can look at your name in terms of numbers. You can look at your time of birth. What are the kind of the main things that you can comprise from just looking at?
So there is quite a lot. There is quite a lot that you can do, and lots of pieces of information that you can work with. So to do that fully and properly is quite in depth. But the top line is that. So the most accessible one is to look at the day of your birth. Yeah. So the 14th or the 27th or the 9th, whatever it is of any month. So forget the month, forget the year, think about the day that you were born on. If you were born on the 11th, then the number is 11, and that's a special case, leave it at that. And if you're born on the 22nd of any month, then 22 is special, so leave it at that. Yeah. But if it's any other number, then you've got to bring it down to a single number. So if you're born on the 1st, that's easy, then the number is 1. Yeah. If you're born on the 7th, that's easy, it's 7. If you're born on the 23rd, it's 2 plus 3, which is 5. Yeah. 31st, 3 plus 1 is 4. Yeah, etc. Yeah. So the number you land up with is either 1 through 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, or 11, or 22. Yeah.
But okay, 11 or 22. So why are 11 or 22 different from the rest?
So in the history of numerology, 11 and 22 are always recognized as master numbers, as higher vibrations. So whenever you've got anybody born on the 11th or born on the 22nd, and this should be pretty visible in the person, there will always be an extra something to their life. people who are born on the 11th are born on the 22nd. They don't lead standard lives. Whatever else is going on with them, there's always an aspect of they do things to the extreme. Born on the 11th is normally emotional extremes. Born on the 22nd is normally physical extremes.
Oh, okay.
But they're all, and extremes doesn't necessarily mean bad. It just means that they don't lead regular, normal lives. There's always something extra going on with them.
Okay.
And it comes from the idea that that 22 is a very special number in numerology, and 11 is half of that.
Okay, and if you look at the history of numbers goes way back, right? It's not something that kind of just appeared with the spirituality and stuff like that. It goes even, I think, before astrology, way before astrology, right?
Well, so yeah, I went to a psychic fair another time, and I was having a table this time years ago, and this woman came up to me and she said, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Numerology," I said. "Numerology," she replied. "Whatever will they think of next?" Like as if it had just been invented. Numerology is the oldest possible thing.
Yeah.
Because, so go back to the beginnings of society, the beginnings of humanity. As soon as somebody was able to count that they had 4 goats or 6 cows or whatever,
Yeah.
then somebody else in the tribe was saying, 4, that means something. 6, oh, that's not so lucky. You need to have 7. Yeah, so somebody's been, as long as people have been counting, somebody else has been saying, yes, but these numbers that you're counting, they have a meaning. So even when people were looking up at the night sky, you know, somebody was counting, oh, there's a planet, there's a star, there's a something, there's a something, there's a something. And somebody else was saying, yes, there's 5 of them. That means something.
Yeah.
So numerology is ancient.
Yeah. And it goes, I mean, in terms of the stuff that we study at school, you know, 1 + 1 is 2 in the times table. This is different, right? This is on a much deeper level. Like the stuff that we study at school is nothing to do with numerology in that sense.
No, it isn't anything to do with numerology. However, there's an interesting thing that's happening now, which is that, so with the advent of YouTube and things like that, you've got a lot of independent maths educators and teachers out there who are superficially just teaching kids arithmetic and you know, maths problems. But it's really interesting how they talk about it. And really, they won't admit it, but they're talking about numerology because they're talking about that each number has an energy and that the energy determines what you could do with that number. So one of the most maths type YouTube channels out there is a channel called Number File as in PH, as in number lover. And it's all to do with maths and science and the science of maths. But when you really listen to it, if you've got the slightest little bit of consciousness awareness about you, you can see that they are talking about cosmic, universal, spiritual patterns. They don't speak in that language. They don't use those terms, but you can see it just oozes out of everything that they do. There are these patterns, and they're all to do with numbers, and numbers make certain things happen in certain ways, and other numbers don't. And you know, there's professional science geniuses out there that are basically doing numerology, but they're not calling it numerology. And they're using it to look at quantum physics and blah, 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 and things like that.
Yeah.
That's slightly off the track maybe, but it's an interesting little...
No, it's really interesting. I guess you can never really separate them, isn't it? Because it is numbers, it's numerology. It's just, I guess, which perspective do you choose to look at? The kind of more regular one or the one that goes deeper?
Yeah, so a good example, the simple example to grasp it is, so everybody knows who Take That is, yeah? The band Take That, everybody knows who that is. Nothing to do with whether we like them or not. We just know that once upon a time there was 5 members of Take That. Yeah. Then there was 4 members of Take That. Then there was 3 members of Take That. I don't know what it currently is. I'm not that interested. But there was 5 of them. Then there was 4 of them. Then there was 3 of them. Right?
Yeah.
Well, so what? But when there were 5, they had a totally different vibe than when they were 4.
Yeah.
And then when there were 3, they had a totally different vibe again. And it's not, the superficial explanation is, well, yeah, obviously because Robbie had a deeper voice and then he left and they had to change their vocal harmonies. That's the muggle explanation. The deeper thing is that they had a different energy when there was 5 of them to when there was 4 of them to when there's 3 of them. And the numerology talks about the energy of it.
Of the number, yeah.
Another one, the Spice Girls. I know it's a silly example, but there used to be 5 Spice Girls, and now there's currently only 4 of them.
Yeah.
And that is a thing. It's a different vibe. It's not the same vibe. It's not the same energy.
Okay, so what's the energy, if you were to compare, what's the energy of 5 to 4? What's the difference between them?
So 5 is always recognised as being a very expansive, free number. But 4 is a more structured and ordered number. 4 can be a little bit oppressive and a little bit stuck and not adventurous. 5 can be quite adventurous. 4 not so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say 4 is more conformist? So it's not so kind of...
Bang on. 4 is very conformist. 5 is about freedom. 4 is about conformity.
Yeah, when you think about it, all the bands that were of 5 people, they've always kind of, well, not all of them, but a lot of them have made it big, have always had 5 members.
There's always a vibe. The point is, it's a different vibe. They're just examples to see that when you change the number of people in a group, you change the energy of the group.
And what about things like specific dates of historic dates, like 9/11? Is there a meaning?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. Big time. I mean, that's going right down into another conversation, I think, really. But there is big time a load of what look like coincidences, but aren't coincidences at all.
Really?
About how the numbers basically allow you to predict what's going to happen if you really want to do it.
Yeah.
Not something I recommend that you do, but it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, so how does free will play into this? Because if the numbers are telling you, well, this is what the energy of this particular day is going to be, how much can you alter between that?
So free will is a thing. We have it. We can alter things, but I think that in big things we don't have much free will. I think in national, international, global, cultural things, I don't think free will is. I personally don't think that free will applies. I think things happen if they're meant to happen.
Yeah.
For a reason, for a lesson. But in individual lives, I think free will is a stronger force.
Yeah.
So going back to the story about the having the reading and choosing to ignore it when I was younger, I free will chose to ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get it really. I could have re-listened to it and maybe I would have understood it, but I chose to not pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
So, one of the things Arthur used to say was that free will, it does exist, but really it's only ever the free will to get things wrong. It's only ever the free will to go against the guidance that you have received. It's a bit challenging, that, but he was quite strong about it.
Yeah.
Free will is not therefore necessarily such a good thing. We choose to go against what we know we should do.
Yeah. And I think you described it in one of your interviews as kind of like going into the current or against it kind of thing. So if you're working with your number and using the highest level of the energy that it has to offer, then you're kind of going with the flow in the current.
Yeah. So free will is jumping in the river and trying to swim against the tide.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do it?
I think, but a lot of us do that, don't we?
Oh God, I still do. But why? Because it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So Tell me about some of your biggest aha moments that you've had throughout, ever since you started this.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's lots, but I suppose a big one is for me to realize. So why did I get into all this in the first place? The reason I got into all this is because I definitely was not interested in going to church, right? I was not interested in going to church at all. I was very anti-church, very anti-Christianity in my youth and in my 20s.
Was your family quite religious, or were they?
No, they weren't. No, they weren't particularly religious, but the culture of the time, 1970s, 1980s, it was, Christianity was there as a very, very central thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't pushed down my throat, but it was, I was just instinctively against it.
Yeah.
And I remember actually I did in my youth research to try to learn about Islam, because I was so anti-Christianity that I was interested in learning about, like the opposite of it.
Yeah.
I never did anything with that, but I checked it out. So I was the weirdo reading the Quran at 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
In 1980, whatever. Anyway, so I was dead against the church, and then I was dead against all religions. And so therefore I was dead against the idea of God. Because all those things go together, don't they?
Yeah.
But then I realized that God has got nothing to do with religions at all. In fact, if anything, religion is anti-God in many ways. And that's so obvious, and maybe a lot of listeners would be like, yeah, duh, I know that. Well, great. I didn't know that. And then when I realized it, really everything changed, because it was very clear that there was a higher force operating in my life and in the life of the world. I could see it, and in all my clients, I could see it all the time. But I couldn't put it in a religious context. I couldn't put it in a church context.
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. And I looked at Buddhism and all alternative religions like that, and I still couldn't really get on board with it. But I then realized that I could get on board with the idea of God without all the baggage that goes with it.
Yeah.
And that was, as they call it, a game changer for me.
Would you say you think of it more as this intelligence? Because that's, when I think of God, that's what I think, because all of these things that have been created to fit so perfectly with each other, and all the patterns and all the parallels between everything, and the synchronicities and things like that. I just think there must be this big intelligence that has come up with this. There's no way it could have just appeared out of nowhere, the Big Bang, and then all of this happened by accident. I just don't buy into that. There's nothing in me that says, yeah, this is, we're just here by accident. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make, I agree entirely. It doesn't make any sense at all. It never has made any sense that there's randomness. I don't believe in randomness at all, in any way. To me, God is a living intelligence that is, it sounds so corny, but that is everywhere.
Yeah, no, pretty much.
It's not over there somewhere. It's everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
And in fact, a lot of the religions of the world, they do, if you really delve into them, they do kind of accept that. But the problem I still have with religion a little bit is that it's more about laws than it is about God. And I'm interested in God. I'm not really interested in laws.
Yeah.
Although I understand that the laws are meant to be so that you can reach God better. But I think a lot of the laws are outdated and maybe never even worked in the first place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So a living intelligence.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I feel like, anything to do with kind of, the thing is, I feel like there's so many things in those religions that actually they match, and they correlate. And there are bits of things that you can kind of pick out and say, yes, like that feels right to me. But then they've twisted it, haven't they? They've just put their own sort of opinions of how things should be, how they should be. I mean, even with the Bible, it's been translated so many times, and each time it's been done by a different person. So that means their opinion has gone into it as well, not just, the original text. So we're essentially reading someone else's opinion of someone else's opinion of someone else's opinion of what that original message was. So
absolutely, and it's made more difficult by the fact that because the idea of God it's a bit distant to a lot of people. It's very hard to, when you read some of the religious stuff, it's very hard to get your head around it. So, for example, a classic example, although there's millions of these examples in all religions, a classic example is in Islam, in the Hadith, which is not the Quran, it's the other set of teachings of Islam. There's a quotation where it is said that let's get this right, every soul shall have a taste of death. Right? Every soul shall have a taste of death.
yeah.
There's two ways to interpret that. You could interpret that in a crazy jihadi kind of way,
Yeah.
right? You could easily do that. Every soul will have a taste of death.
Yeah.
But that's not what it was intended as. What it was intended as was the soul is different to the body. The soul comes into the body, has a life in the body, but then the body dies. The soul carries on, but through the soul being in the body and then the body dying, that soul had a taste of what death is all about because its body died.
Okay. So
And then the soul goes on to something else.
Yeah.
So there's two ways to interpret a lot of what is written in these texts, but we just don't do it. We're not. That's not taught to us.
Exactly. Yeah. We just choose a specific way and kind of stick with it. Okay. So let's go back to the numbers. And in terms of how can people live their life according to numbers? Like, what are kind of the main things, that they can kind of use to their own, to enhance their life a little bit more? So
the easiest way, there's lots of ways to do this, and really it requires a bit more of an in-depth conversation, but an easy way, an accessible way to do it is go back to this, what is your day of birth number that we spoke about a minute ago. So you find out what your day of birth number is, so just from the day of your birth, not anything to do with your month or year. So you can have, and you reduce it down to a single number, so you get 1 to 9, or you get 11, or you get 22.
Yeah.
And you give each number a colour. And you try to introduce that colour into your life more. Right? You don't be fundamentalist about it. So you don't always only wear that colour.
Yeah.
But you make sure that you introduce that colour somewhere into your life, because colour is a vibration as well. Right? So we'll quickly run through it, and it won't take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
1 is red.
Okay.
So if you're born on the 1st, or the 10th, or the 19th of the month, any month, then 1 is the number, and red is your colour.
Okay.
Wear more red.
Oh, okay.
2 is orange. 3 is yellow. 4 is green. And what some people will notice here is that we're working up in chakra colours.
Oh yeah.
Working upwards. So 1 is red, 2 is yellow. 1 is red, 2 is orange, 3 is yellow, 4 is green, 5 is blue, 6 is indigo. Yeah. 7 is violet.
Oh, violet's my favorite color. Okay, now I know why.
What a surprise! So then we've got a problem, because what is the color of the 8th chakra?
Yeah.
Is there indeed even an 8th chakra? Some people are not on board with that.
Yeah.
So what's the color of 8? And then what's the color of 9? We don't know.
Oh, okay.
So we've got to then research or think about. So essentially with 8 and 9, you can kind of choose your own color.
Yeah.
I mean, if you believe in the 8th chakra and you believe that the 8th chakra is magenta,
yeah,
then you go with magenta.
That's as far as I remember. Yeah. Magenta.
Yeah, but some people don't buy that. So with 8 and 9, you can choose your color. With 11, it's silver.
Okay.
And with 22, it's gold.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, because
Yeah.
they normally use silver and gold when they do healing and stuff, isn't it? So I guess that's the highest. Yeah.
Higher vibrations.
Mm. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense. I've never thought about that. I never realized that they actually relate to colors as well, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Oh, interesting.
I mean,
Okay.
that's like the most basic way of introducing that, but there's lots of other things you could say about that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
basically, if you bring the color closer to you, if you bring the color of your number closer to you,
Hmm.
going to have a positive effect because you're being more of your vibration.
So, so the reason why these particular numbers match the colors is it because their vibration is similar? So they kind of match the vibration of the number as well. Okay. Okay. That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
if you want to be sciencey about it, it's to do with the electromagnetic spectrum and the visible light spectrum, and then the invisible light spectrum, and the frequency of the different colours matches the
Okay.
frequency of the numbers. If you
Okay.
want
So
to science
I'm
it,
like
but
a logic freak and they want the scientific explanation. That's a good way to explain it. In general, how have you found combining these two worlds? Because I don't know, I found it quite difficult from the beginning, especially, you know, going into spirituality. So going from someone who was a complete non-believer and not believing in anything to do with that, just because mostly I wasn't really around anyone who was into this, and then I kind of jumped into this sort of spirituality and numbers and astrology, and I found it quite difficult, especially in the beginning, to combine two worlds, because I guess if you're around people who are not really into this field, it's quite hard to, you know, because you want to talk about the things that interest you, but then you don't want to seem like a crazy one. But then in a way you have to, because then how do you?
I understand. No, you're quite right. It is a thing. To me, it's all about balance. So I'll say something controversial. I don't mean to be controversial. I don't mean to be offend anybody, but I will say it because I do think it's true. I think it's very difficult to be to develop the spiritual side of yourself if you only ever mix with people who are not interested in it.
Yeah.
That bit's not controversial. It's the other bit. In a minute, it's going to be controversial.
Okay.
So if you want to be more spiritual, you've got to find people that are on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
But if all you ever do is mix with people on the same wavelength, that is not good.
Yeah.
Because that is unbalanced.
Yeah.
The hardest people to have a proper spiritually orientated conversation with are people that spend every minute of every day thinking about spiritual ideas, because they don't have any check or balance in their life or their head.
Yeah.
In other words, we should do some spiritual stuff and then we should do some non-spiritual stuff.
Yeah, it almost goes into the whole escapism kind of route, doesn't it? Because a lot of people who go into spirituality are kind of using it to escape reality altogether, because, you know, it's either so painful or so hurtful and they've been hurt by so many people. So they just want to escape this reality and go into their own bubble. But then that's not really healthy, because you're still here and you're still here to experience the material world. And you obviously chose that for a reason. So
yeah, and I was one of those people. So I've done that. I've been guilty of seeking escapism. But you see, the reason I say it is because not everything has a spiritual explanation. Now, it kind of does on some level, but you know. So, for example, if somebody is coming to see you, and they come to see you a lot, and they're always late. Not like a little bit late, but you know, they're always mega late.
yeah.
And their excuse is always something to do with Mercury retrograde or difficult vibrations or bad chakra alignment or whatever. Then actually, this lateness that they're manifesting, it's nothing to do with spiritual practices. It's to do with the fact
They just can't take ownership of
that they
the.
can't take ownership and responsibility of actually doing what they said they're going to do. There isn't any spiritual explanation to that. It's that they need to wise up.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's really hard. That's a really hard thing to say and to analyze, but it's definitely a thing. So if the answer is, well, it's nothing to do with spirituality, that's wrong. If the answer is it's everything to do with spirituality, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Everything's a mixture.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh wow, Mercury retrograde. I've never used that one before. I do run late quite a lot of the times, but that's That's a new one.
It's a new one, yes.
Next time.
But it is a thing. It is a thing. But it can't be a thing all the time, and it can't be the only thing.
Yeah.
Right. So the classic is, people don't do it to me anymore, but it has happened a lot. The classic is where people will make appointments and then not turn up, or like, text 1 minute before the appointment and say, oh, I'm not coming.
Oh.
And then blame it on the traffic at the end of their street is horrendous, or the bus has been cancelled and therefore it's not meant to be. Now, maybe that's true. But if that's happening all the time, there's something else going on here. And it's nothing to do with it's not meant to be. It's to do with the fact that actually you didn't leave on time, did you? Or, you didn't get up, or whatever. There's another reason.
It's just a straight up, explanation of, no, this is what it is. Yeah.
So in order to do all this stuff, I think you have to be living in both of those worlds. And we think, well, I don't want to live in both worlds. I just want to live the spiritual life. And that's okay. But in the spiritual life, it does mean that if you said 10 o'clock, you have to turn up at 10.
Yeah.
And because, and if you said you were going to do X, you have to do X, because that's an honouring then of the other person.
Yeah.
And we can't find lots of excuses and reasons why, oh no, I couldn't do that.
Yeah. And I guess it's also down to do with integrity, isn't it? You have to have that integrity within you to commit to what you've promised this other person. So that's not spiritual if you don't, if you don't do it at the end. So it's not just, and I think that's where a lot of people fall into this trap of, oh no, like, for example, if there was traffic somewhere and they just think, oh, this is the universe's way of telling me I shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, no, you listen to your own intuition about whether you're meant to be doing this or not, and then you look at the signs. Whereas a lot of people do it the other way around. They look at the signs and the external, and then they kind of check in with themselves, even if they do that at the end.
Yeah, signs can be a bit dangerous. Signs are definitely part of the path, but the danger with relying on signs, I'm looking for a sign as to what to do, is that often we only see what we want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Tricky.
Yeah. Tell me about your daily routine and how you start your day.
So I am a bit hardcore, I suppose. I don't think that I am, but other people have said that I am. In that I think it is important to start the day as you mean to go on. And I think that often the course of a day it can be a downhill slide. So if you don't start it well, you can struggle to get through the day. Sometimes you can struggle to remain positive and do what you need to do. So I think it's really important. So I always start the day with some movement, meditation, and solid, proper, healthiest breakfast that can possibly be. And there's a million excuses and reasons why for me not to do those things.
Yeah.
But I've noticed over time that if I don't do those things, then there's a problem. So
what do you feel if you don't do it? What signs do you get?
So people will say, so people will come to me and they're having all sorts of difficulties, and I will know that they have got a meditation practice because I've spoken to them before. They have a meditation practice which they do.
Yeah.
And I will say, okay, so you're not in a good place. Have you been doing your meditation? No, I haven't been doing my meditation. So that's why you're not in a good place. But then it's really difficult, because if they've gone into the bad place, whatever the bad place is for them, whether maybe it's mental health, or maybe just they're demotivated, or they just can't be bothered, or they don't see the point of things. Yeah. Once they've got into that space, doing the meditation or whatever their practice is to get them out of that was too late. It's too late.
Yeah.
The purpose of meditation and the daily practice, whatever it is for the person, is not to dig us out when we get into bother. It's to make sure we don't get into bother in the first place.
Yeah. Yes.
So what tends to happen for me is that if I'm not on it in terms of my mindfulness, meditation, movement, getting myself,
space
straight for the day, then actually on day one where I don't do that, it doesn't matter. On day two, maybe it doesn't matter. But then by day 3 or day 4 or day 5, if I've missed all of those, actually I'm completely all over the place.
Yeah.
And actually I can't even remember that it's due to the fact that I haven't done my practice.
Yeah. It's only when you think back and you realize, oh, okay, I haven't done it for 5 days, and then it makes, it clicks.
And it's really important to keep your practice varied. Whatever your practice is, it's important to vary it. Otherwise it just gets too heavy then.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep it moving. But we've got to do, I think you have to do something. I think you have to do something at the start of the day. The teachings are, this is just what I read once, the teachings are that the soul is at its weakest at the start of the day.
Oh.
It's not at its strongest, it's at its weakest. Okay. So we have to give it a boost at the start of the day.
Okay. Yeah.
To get it in the right shape to be able to deal with the day.
For the whole day, yeah. Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes when I wake up and I'm in a bad mood, and if I don't fix it at that point in the morning, then just the whole day just goes to shit. It's kind of
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah.
So what's the practical exercise that you can give audience that they can maybe integrate into their lives, into their daily routine?
Well, look, I mean, everybody's got either a meditation practice, or if they haven't, they've got access to one. So there isn't anything that can be said with, do this meditation practice because it's better than the others. That's not going to help.
Yeah. What about the folding the hands one, the one that you mentioned?
Yeah. So back in the idea of numerology being addition and subtraction, so that connects us into the idea that life is positive and negative. And I don't mean good and bad as such, that's a different conversation, but there's definitely positive active forces and negative more passive forces, if you like.
Yeah.
Masculine, feminine, if you like. Up and down, if you like. So one of the ideas is that we're all running electricity and magnetism. We're all running electromagnetic forces through our body all the time, 24/7.
Yeah.
And when that gets out of whack, when it's too much electricity or too much magnetism, then we're out of kilter, we're out of balance, and that's when problems come. So too much electricity is too much activity, is burnout, is burnouts and breakouts and exhaustion. And too much magnetism is too much passivity, is too much, I can't be doing with it, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
So we want the balance. And what the old trick that I was taught is that the balance comes from folding your hands, which is crazy talk, because how can that possibly do anything? But actually, when we're doing all this, it's electricity.
Yeah.
When we're not doing anything, it's magnetism. Here it's both. So it's like if we're an electromagnetic current, here we close the circuit, and the energy then is not flying off everywhere. It's contained. It's no accident, I think, that is obviously a prayer position. Yeah. But I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in the electromagnetic, get your energy under control kind of way.
Yeah. Wow.
And that, sitting like that for a few minutes in the morning, gets our energy in check and in balance before the day begins.
Oh, wow. So do you think that's where the prayer comes from? The putting the hands together in the prayer?
I can't prove it, but I do think that's where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Because there must be a reason why they've kind of chosen it to be like that.
Yeah. It is an earthing. It is a balancing of the positive and the negative, the electricity and the magnetism. And actually you can test it for yourself. If you're feeling stressed and anxious throughout the day, then 60 seconds of that, it doesn't have to be matched with any particular thoughts, just a kind of, I'm closing the circuit of my energy is more calm here. You'll see the effect.
Yeah. No, actually I did try it yesterday, and I felt a lot calmer after like 5 minutes of doing that. Yeah. I never noticed it before because you never really sit.
Yeah, it's such a tiny thing. So not hours or anything like that, and not even maybe 5 minutes, maybe just, you know, a few minutes.
Yeah.
But regularly, it's definitely a thing. It's such a silly little thing, but I've always been interested in silly little things that other people overlook.
Yeah.
I think contain very, very powerful secrets and practices.
Yeah, totally. Because those are sometimes the very things that make a huge difference, isn't it? When you add them all together. Yeah. So I just want to finish. There's a sentence that you mentioned somewhere that I really, really, really resonated with me, and it just stuck in my head. And I just want to read it out. And it's basically numbers are energies. If you're aware of them, you direct them. If you're not aware of them, they direct you. I love that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, to fully understand how they direct you, we have to know a little bit more about the numbers and the calculations, but it's definitely true.
Yeah, I can totally see that in my own life. How if you don't take charge of your own energy, of your own kind of things and weaknesses and positives and everything, then they totally just, you know, overrun you and start dictating your life, and it just goes berserk basically.
Yeah.
So
you have to run your own energy. You have to understand what your own energy is, but you have to run your own energy, or it will always run you. And that when it runs you, that's when all sorts of difficulties occur.
Yeah, and when I think about all the kind of spiritual practices, a lot of people who are, you know, very much aware of this and how other energies affect them, they never leave a practice before kind of, you know, they call it closing down or grounding or closing their energy so that they don't have anything interfering with their energy. So that makes a lot of sense that people do that, because you don't.
Yeah, it does. That's excellent. Yeah, that's really good, because really at the end of every interaction that you have with somebody, I mean, you know, maybe in like everyday life, buying a cup of coffee, maybe you wouldn't do it, but anything that's meaningful, or there's been any real exchange of energy.
Yeah.
If you just say, right, bang, done, that's it, you know, you wrench your energy away from it, you know, that's a bit like ripping a plaster off kind of thing. It's much better to conclude it and say, okay, you know, we're done, thank you very much. And then the energy can be separated more smoothly,
more evenly. Yeah, totally. Okay, well, wow, that was such a fascinating interview. I loved everything that we covered. I mean, it goes so much more than numbers, isn't it? Because numbers is just in everything. So God, you're just like a Wikipedia page. There's so much you obviously more accurate in a
more reliable. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to finish off with, that you maybe want to let people know about, or sort of like a last advice?
Well, when something is interesting, whatever it is, then it's your soul telling you that you'll be good at it. So a lot of people will know that, but a lot of people will then second guess it and say, well, I'm really interested in ABC, but there's no money in it, so there's no point me doing it. Forget that second part. If you're interested in ABC, then your soul is saying you'll be good at it. So investigate it, whatever it is. Go with where your interests are.
Yeah.
And worry, I know it's easy to say, but worry about the success of it later on.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think a lot of people come to the conclusion as well, either later on in their life or earlier on in their life, but at some point everyone reached this kind of crisis point if they haven't followed what excites them or what makes them really interested in something. Then they'll definitely have a like a turning point where they'll realize they haven't actually been living their life to their fullest.
Yeah, and the sooner when that happens, it can be painful, but it's a wonderful thing, because all things become possible after that.
Yeah, totally. And people can also find you on your website, which is thehermitage.org.uk.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and also I know you're not a big social media fan, but is there anywhere else where people can?
Yeah, I'm not a big social media fan, although I'm playing with Instagram, but yeah, I'm just playing with it. So the website is the place to be.
The website. Okay, so thehermitage.org.uk. And yeah, you've also written some really amazing books that we have to talk about the next time around. One of them is called Great Britain, The Secret Destiny of the British Isles. Can you tell us just a little bit what that's about?
It's about how the things that are going on in Britain at the moment are the latest chapter in a very long story, and that we are approaching what we would call a national reset moment. And that depends on your attitude. That is either absolutely awful and terrible and the worst thing ever, or depends on your point of view, it's like a new beginning and a fresh start. Whatever we think about it, it's definitely coming. There's no doubt about it. And I said all this before the referendum in 2016.
Oh, wow.
But before the referendum in 2016, I said in the book that it would be a vote to leave, and that we would leave. And it wasn't whether we should, it was just that we would. And that various other things would happen. And it's all come to pass. And it's all through numerology.
Wow. So you predicted that we'll leave the EU?
I did. It's in the book.
Wow. That's fascinating. Okay, Richard, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we'll definitely have another one where we focus more in depth on some of the other topics that we've mentioned today. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And
great to talk to you. Yeah, no problem at all. And see you again another time.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.